If you're a business owner or a business leader and you're managing all the functions of your C-suite, subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and let's start talking about how you can make the most use of your time so that you can enjoy life and keep the dream alive. Welcome to another episode of Fractional with Chris Capone and Associates. I'm here with my good friend and colleague, Robert Rens. And I had a little rough meeting before this show, and you told me to take my shoes off, so I'm starting to
get grounded.
Get grounded. It's starting to feel a little bit better.
Yeah, I felt your temperature come down a couple degrees after you took your shoes off.
Yeah,
and
man.
You can go sand socks if you want to, and get into our $20 Target rug here.
Yeah,
and that'll really help you get lower your frequency a little bit more and get right in the podcast space.
Yeah, man, I'm getting there.
Yeah.
But cool. Thanks for joining today, and would like to, talk and learn a little bit more about your story and specifically what you got going on with Signal Fire and in the podcast production space and all that type of
This is
stuff.
my favorite, Chris, because we're totally shooting from the hip here, right?
Yeah.
Like completely unplanned, no show prep, no notes, nothing at all whatsoever, which is what I think makes podcasting such a great emerging medium, right? Like you're a subject matter expert in what it is that you do.
Yep.
I'm trying to become a subject matter expert in what it is that I do. But, in an environment, when you have an emerging market of something or a new medium, things happen to change faster than what, the people who are producing it can keep up with.
Yep.
But nonetheless, that notwithstanding that challenge of our industry, being able to just sit down and have a conversation with somebody and both share and receive value from each other in an exchange that other people are going to go listen to and hopefully receive value from and then share it. How many times do when you and I are talking, you're like, oh, I was listening to this podcast and there was this thing that...
It's like how a lot of our conversations start.
It's how a lot of our modern day conversations start in general. Like people are like, oh man, I saw this thing on a podcast and now all of a sudden, we're propagating human communication and we're sharing value further down the chain of people. And that's what I think is just such a cool and amazing thing about podcasting is it creates this opportunity for us to do that, to have that value exchange between other sentient human beings.
Yeah. So, I mean, like just looking back, on how we met, I always like, that's always fun on all these is like how, what's the story? How do we get here together? And it goes back to, it actually goes back before we met in person. Yeah. I used to see your face on a bunch of buses and like advertising media for your State Farm.
Those beautiful photoshopped headshots that I had plastered all over town.
Oh man, the flowing hair, the grace.
Man. I'm bringing it back a little bit, right? Yeah.
So Rob owned a State Farm insurance agency and you recently exited, which is super cool. And now you're focusing on stuff that I can tell you are truly stoked about.
Yeah, I get to be uniquely entrepreneurial. Like, I am an advocate for, and State Farm is not a franchise model, but it's about as close as you can get to a franchise model within the insurance space. It's just the agreements are different, right? You're a licensed independent contractor appointed with the insurance company where under like these franchise models, like you buy into the system, but you're exclusive to them. As a military veteran, and there's so many statistics that are out there now, Chris, that support military veteran franchise ownership. Yep. It is a great path to being a small business owner.
Absolutely.
You're given a playbook, you're given all the standard operating procedures. You're kind of just said, here, do these things and manage your people well and run your business tight. And that's what, I think every business person needs to have those kind of fundamental lessons, and they're often learned the hard way. Yep. Like there's no level of preparation you can do in an MBA program or a job transition, workforce development thing that is going to put you in the chair of running a company.
Yep.
And no matter what the size is, whether it's 3 people or 3,000 people, they all have their own unique challenges. But like you have to learn that experientially. And I learned that in the insurance agency. And then I also learned something about myself. Like that was not the best business model fit for me.
Right.
It just wasn't.
Right.
Like, I'm not a behind the desk kind of guy.
You don't strike me as a behind the
No,
desk guy.
no. And I like to be more kind of like proactive with my calendar, and that type of business model is very reactive. Like when the phone rings, you answer it. When
Right.
the email comes in, you respond to it. And sometimes that happens outside of normal working business hours. And so while it was a fantastic lesson for me on those like fundamental things that you need to learn that you can only learn by experiencing, it also told me, hey, you know, while State Farm is a great company, they have a great program.
Mm-hmm.
It just wasn't the very best fit for me.
Oh.
So, you know, I was like, okay, I'm at year 4. I have built something of meaning. And I felt like it was like, okay, I can give this up. And I, you know, had to massage some of my customers and whatnot because you build relationships with people and you hate to let those things go sometimes. But it was like, I can hand you all over. You'll land very soft. And then I'm just going to pivot real hard into the things that I know I am passionate about and I can not have to fake motivation over every single day.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes we get in that trap of like going to work and you're like, I don't like what I'm doing. You know,
been there, man.
Yeah, we all have
been there.
And you got to put on the face and you got to show up and you got to do it.
Kills you a little bit inside.
It does until you're like, okay, I don't want to die on this hill.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like I am dying inside, but I don't want this to physically kill me. And that's where you take a choice on a chance and you decide to do something a little bit different.
Yeah.
You know, but take all that great experience with you.
So tell me the story. How did you get to where you are today? Like, because you know we've met and we've had so many conversations, but I still don't know really the story of how you got, because I know you were in the.
So I'll back you all the way up to the very beginning.
Let's do it.
Yeah, so in 2003, I was presented with a choice from my dad. He said, you can join the military or you can figure it out on your own. Both of those options kind of seemed like the exact same kind of path. Like, I'm going to go to the military and figure it out on my own, or I'm not going to go in the military and figure it out on my own.
Yeah.
And there wasn't really much of a choice for me. My dad was a Marine Corps veteran. I was raised in a Marine Corps household. So it was like, okay, I'm going to join the Marines. That was I knew that by like after September 11th, that was kind of going to be my path.
And this was like kind of like you're exiting high school, like at that point.
Yeah, I graduated high school in 2003. So somewhere post 9/11 into 2002. I was like, contract was signed, MOS selected, date scheduled to go to Parris Island for boot camp. Like, I basically screwed off my entire senior year because I'm kind of lazy and I like to procrastinate, and I'm already looking ahead to the next thing, which I do have a tendency of doing. I've gotten better in my advanced age.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, October 7th, 2003, I stepped my feet on the yellow footprints of Parris Island, South Carolina, and became a United States Marine. And shortly thereafter was right around the time we were already at war in Afghanistan. We'd already made the initial invasion into Afghanistan. That had been going on for 18 months to 2 years. But we had just made the invasion into Iraq too recently. So it was like joining the Marines during wartime. Here we go.
Yeah.
And that grows you up really, really quick. Add layer on top of that the unit that I was with got transformed into a mortuary affairs company, or battalion rather. And what we did in mortuary affairs was collect the remains of soldiers, sailors, airmen, coasties, and Marines.
Oh my gosh.
And DoD contractors that were killed in action. We'd inventory their effects. We'd process their remains. And we would send them home in a dignified manner for a military burial, to be reunited with their family, to be laid to rest. Heavy work for young kids.
Very heavy.
Very heavy work. Again, you grow up quick when you're underneath those circumstances.
Which parts of the world were you?
In Iraq. Yeah, in Iraq. All in Al Anbar province, western part of Iraq, about 50 miles west of Baghdad. We were in Camp Al Taqadum, Camp Fallujah, Al Assad, Ramadi, Tikrit. That whole area in the latter part of the world, like 2005 to 2008, was my time of being over there.
Oh my gosh, that's such a different. I mean, really, like hearing you talk about it, it's like I'm like trying to like visualize myself as a 19, 20-year-old kid, like, you know, in the freaking war, like going, you know, and doing what you're doing.
It's hard even for me to look back on it now because it feels like such a lifetime ago. You know, like I'm a business owner in a beautiful coastal city
Yeah.
with a wife who's now a business owner and
Yeah.
2 beautiful daughters. And like, I feel like I kind of understand life now a little bit. Looking back on it, it's like, that really was an experience that most people don't have. And incredibly unique, but just like a part of all those little, like little imprints that you make on your double helix DNA there that like turns you into the person that you eventually become.
Right.
So yeah, that was a crazy impressionable time.
So what time period were you
2003
overseas?
to 2011. I was overseas from like 05 to 2008. My last deployment, I got home in September of 2008. And then I finished out my time in the reserves around Atlanta.
Okay.
And that's when I went back to school, went to Kennesaw State, met my wife there.
Okay.
And she was going through nursing school. So it's the same story that every other Marine has. They married a nurse. And yeah, we were together. Well, we've been together since 2008. So we're about to celebrate our 10-year wedding anniversary, though.
Congrats.
This September. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, I got to put a plug out there. I've done this before on our show. Avelo Airlines flying from ILM down to South Florida.
Yeah.
Super worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I booked round trip tickets to Tampa. We're going to stay at Clearwater Beach, staying on points at the hotel. I want you to guess, how much do you think we paid for the flight? 2 tickets.
Round trip, $185.
Close. $174.86.
I've been checking out the prices.
Dude,
so that's
it's
why
worth it.
That's why
and
I
it's
wasn't
a great
too far
travel
off.
experience too.
Yeah.
Like the flight, the planes are clean, they're modern.
Yeah.
They don't have all the bells and whistles, but it's an hour flight from here to Tampa. Nice flight attendants. So anyway, shout out to Avelo. We're still trying to get them to sponsor the Signal Fire Media Podcast Network.
There
here.
you go, Avelo. Come on.
Yeah, but went to school, studied communications, minored in American history because I just am kind of like a history nerd like that.
Okay.
And it's interesting, your network. People say your network is your net worth. I never really loved that.
Yeah.
Your net worth is what you do, but there is value in your network, considerable value in your network if you know how to get into it. Yeah. So while I was in school, a couple of guys that I was in mortuary affairs with were training to become funeral directors. And so they were working at a funeral home close to where KSU was. And they were like, hey, can you do some part-time work? Just so happened that the general manager at that funeral home was a Navy veteran. So he's like, mentoring us. And
yeah, there's definitely like an unspoken like bond.
An exchange of value between me and him. And and he invited me to a golf tournament. And I'm like, sure, I'll go play golf. And just so happens the guy who was the 4th on our team, we didn't know, but he had just moved to Atlanta and he got brought in for the company that the funeral home general manager was working for. They have a very big sales organization, huge multinational company, was multinational. Now it's US only. They divested like 60% of their properties somewhere in the late 90s, early 2000s. But nonetheless, he was like, saw me, was talking to me, was like, hey, you would be good in sales. And I'm like, bro, no. Sales is for people who can't get a real job, right? That's how I thought about it. And he was just persistent. He was like, no, you'll come and work for me. I'll teach you the trade. Like, you're a good communicator. You have an interesting backstory that makes you relatable to people. Yep. And maybe not so much relatable to people, but gives you credibility. Because it was working in funeral and cemetery sales. So he's like, bro, you've got like the thing you need to do to be successful here. So I took a leap and I went and worked for him. And that's kind of where I started my path to being a professional salesperson, which is sort of what I bill myself as now. Professional salesperson / entrepreneur. Those two things have to go hand in hand. In my mind, in order to be a successful entrepreneur, you kind of have to be able to go out and sell a product or a service to people.
Well, definitely. Yeah. I mean, some people, I guess there's a tendency to think that the salesman is the guy with the big smile, like the cheat, the outgoing personality, this and that. But really, sales is about solving problems finding an entry point and solving problems for customers, right? And not every, you don't have to be that outgoing, like, over the top person to be a good salesman. There's many different ways that you can relate and work with people.
I find those people to be off-putting, and especially now because we have this caricature of a salesperson, the used car salesman.
Yeah,
How
exactly.
old is that? Like 30 or 40 years old now that we've been hanging this on the heads of these poor used car
I know.
salespeople when they're really just decent people trying to make a living, right? But your point is exactly right. To be like a consultative professional salesperson, you're really just looking for an entry point for somebody who has a problem with which you have a solution to solve it.
Yep.
Like you're a great example of that, man. Like you saw a marketplace for component associates, and you provide a service, and you're likable and you're outgoing enough, but you're not the wild over the top person that we associate with the sales caricature. But at your juncture for where your business is, if you're not selling, you're not succeeding at all. So you have to, it's an essential function of any business. And so when I came to realize that it wasn't so much about like I have to go out and sell because I have to make a number.
Right.
But it was more like, no, I'm going out and looking for people who need what it is that I have to provide.
Yep.
That allowed me to skinny my market down considerably instead of going, oh, well, everybody can use the product that I have. If you think your target market is everybody, you don't have a target market.
Right, exactly.
When you can skinny that down and go, that's the person that I should be contacting today because I have a solution for their need or for their problem, then you become the professional salesperson. Then you walk yourself out of that caricature because you're just solving problems for people. And that's what I think professional selling is.
Yeah, definitely. So from, so coming back from, getting out of the military and then going into work in the mortuary.
Mortuary. Yeah.
I mean, what a hell of a business. I mean,
dude, there's so much
demand
money in
it. Demand, I guess, is always there.
Incredibly high.
Kind of morbid to talk about, but
it is, but it isn't.
But it's just the reality. Like,
it's a part of the human condition, right?
Yeah.
Like they say the only two inevitable things are death and taxes.
Yeah.
Like you and your teams can deal with the taxes, and then there's me and other people that sort of deal with the death.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, that sort of deal with the death side of things. But yeah, 7,800 people pass away in the U.S. every day. That's our average mortality. Add on to that the baby boomer generation, 10,000 baby boomers are turning 65 every day. And then you add that in after the baby boomers, we had the big Latin America immigration.
Yep.
And then the Gen Xers populated at a rate slightly lower than the boomers. But the millennials, man, we're some baby makers, right? So if you look at the next like 80 years of clients for the funeral and cemetery industry, it's bigger than it's ever been. Just by sheer volume of people, and then working the statistics out that 7,800 people are going to pass away a day. So it is an incredibly lucrative business, but it is also one of those ones that as we evolve as a country and our traditions, some change, some solidify, but we become a little bit more pragmatic in our approaches to things. It's a service that's changing kind of rapidly as culture says, no, this is what we want. This is how we want to create a legacy. This is how we want to be remembered. And I'll tell you this. This will just be a quick little info FYI for people. Three major purchases that people make are currently outpacing the inflation rate. Cost to educate, cost of healthcare, and the cost to die. So that's your funeral services, whether it's cremation or traditional burial, doesn't matter, and the cost for cemetery space. So if you can get ahead of those three major expenses somehow, whether it be through insurance, the savings account, something, get out ahead of those because your CFO will thank you for it.
Oh my gosh, my dad jokes, because we're kind of going through some of that stuff with the family right now, is kind of that like end of life planning, and I mean, geez, the amount of the business that is built off
billions
that is just
billions
insane.
of dollars.
And not gonna, but we've kind of joking, but kind of serious. My dad's like, he loves golf. That's like his deal. He loves golf. He's like, when I get to that point, just send me out on the golf course.
Okay.
And just send me out, and that's it. That's all I need, man.
Yeah.
But oh geez. So then from so working in the mortuary business, which you still are.
Yeah.
a little bit,
Yep,
right?
Yep, a little bit helping with talent strategy and acquisition for a friend's company. They headhunted me and brought me in
Nice.
After I exited the State Farm agency. And this is where
So you put
same guy too, by the way,
Really?
same exact guy that hired me on the golf course in 2010 or 2011.
Yeah.
Paid attention to everything that I had been doing. We kept in touch. He's one of my closest friends. He's a mentor. And was like, hey, you kind of have a need for some of the skill sets that you provide.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I'm doing my media thing. I'm kind of semi-retired, like make me an offer.
Yeah.
And we'll see if we can get there. And we did. So I'm kind of, dipping my toe back into that industry, but from a totally different perspective.
Right.
Which is what I love so much now looking back on it, having like a just 2003, 20-year career now, is being able to look at all those checkpoints to go, okay, that was a meaningful connection that I've now kept for 20 some odd years.
Mm-hmm.
And that time over doing this thing was not wasted at all. Because sometimes if you leave an opportunity, you can feel like, wow, I just wasted 4 years of my life on that.
Yep.
But if you're really being honest with yourself and you're being introspective, you look back at all the stuff that you learned that you can then carry forward with you.
Definitely.
I left the funeral profession for the first time and I went to work for the Atlanta Braves and Sports Talk Radio 680 The Fan in Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh my
Best
gosh.
job of my life.
What were you doing there?
Sales.
Yeah.
Sales.
Okay.
Yeah. Advertising sales.
Yeah.
TK, our producer, engineer extraordinaire, he's spent some time in the radio business, so he'll check my bullshit on this and make sure that I'm being
He's
honest
shaking
with
his head a little bit over there, but so far I think it's legit.
So far we're good.
So far
when you're working still here. When you're working within like the radio model and it works, right? You've got great programming.
Yep.
You've got a sales department that, again, knows exactly who their target market is, and everybody is doing the thing necessary to create good quality media. It's a special thing to be around, and it's fun to be around. Like, I have a group thread. Do you remember Snowpocalypse in Atlanta? You remember when that happened?
What year was that?
I think it was 2014. I believe it was.
Actually, because it happened up here I think in the Raleigh area as well.
It was 2012 to 2014, somewhere in there, because that's when I was working there. But for those of you listening at home that don't remember this, Atlanta got an ice storm. Nobody was prepared for it. 6 million people hit the roads all at the exact same time. It froze. Kids were sleeping in school buses. It was a freaking nightmare.
Right.
I was working at 680 and for the Braves at the time. And we started a group thread. It was around the first time that you could start a group thread text message chain.
Yeah.
I had a Windows phone, so I was the green bubbles before we went with green and blue. We have maintained that group thread since Snowpocalypse consistently every day for now 10 or 11 years with those people that I worked with at that radio station.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So I'm still in the fantasy football league drafts. Like, I want to make a movie about how long our text thread has been maintained throughout all of this. But the point to all that was to say, like, that was a great job because of the people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everything is better when you're around people that you like to be around.
Absolutely.
And everybody has like a singular focus on, this is our mission, this is our vision, these are our values. Now, what's our objective today? Is it to make money? Always. But is it to provide something of meaning to humanity or to a community? If you can do both of those things, make money and provide value to your community, then it is no longer hard to go to work anymore.
Absolutely.
So that's just my one little nugget of advice to people. Like, your show's very entrepreneurially focused. Like, I'm thinking about getting into business maybe, or I'm in business and I'm kind of getting to that point where it's like, I'm just like, I don't know what to do. Maybe I feel like I'm stuck. Find a way to make money and provide a valuable service to your community. Yeah. And rest your laurels on that.
Yep.
That can get you through sometimes. Yeah. That can get you through sometimes.
I wanted to ask this question thinking about it, because I always tell people, success is a subjective term.
It is.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, what is your definition of success for you?
I mean, certainly, like, reputation is important for me. And I've always kind of defined, you could put reputation and brand in the same sort of personal brand and reputation in the same like that is what do people say about you when they leave the room?
Yep.
Like, is it like, Rob's a mostly good guy, but he's also full of shit sometimes? They would be right about that if that's what they said. But if the mostly good guy is what people think about me when I leave the room, I count that as, success. Because if we're all honest with ourselves, we're all kind of pieces of shit sometimes, But if you're mostly good, I quantify that as success. Being able to come home each and every day, pick my daughters up from school, drop them off at school, be involved in the orientations and the ballets and the gymnastics, being there for more of that than what I have to miss, because you do have to make sacrifices.
Yep.
I count that as success.
Nice.
Having a wife who is my best friend, because we collaborate and we talk to each other and we work hard on our relationship, but we also solve complex problems together. I count that as success. And the downstream from all of that, Chris, I believe, is the financial reward of doing the right things for the right reasons.
Yep.
Money follows that.
Yep.
Money follows that. If you're blind capitalist, which I have no problem with, if you're just in it to make money, go make money. Good for you.
Yep.
I just like to look at it from the other direction.
Yeah.
I'm going to do the right things. I'm going to provide value to my community, and then I'm going to ask them for money sometimes.
Have you always kind of had that vision, or
no?
When do you think you?
No.
Because and just before you answer that, I mean, myself, and I'm sure so many people out there, what they're struggling with is they don't even know what their definition of success is. Mm-hmm. So how can you be happy or feel good about what you're doing if you don't know what it is that you're trying to achieve?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. There was a period in my career where I chased the financial vision of success, and I found myself on the back end of it going WTF. Mm-hmm. Like, it was like I was making great money, and that money passed right through our bank account into stuff and things.
Right.
And all the stuff where, people are like, oh, wow, that's, a fantastic suit. How much did that cost you? And I was like, $1,500. And they're like, well, you must be crushing it. Meanwhile, my bank account is getting slimmer and slimmer and slimmer. Mind you, I have always been retiring. I started retiring at like 12 years old when I started mowing lawns. So there's always been money going into 401ks and into mutual funds and whatnot. But cash, I spent it really fast because that's what I thought successful people did, because you had to look successful.
Right.
I hated myself at the end of it. I was like, dude, you are not being true to who you are because you think that success looks like this.
Right.
So then I had to do a whole reassessment of my life and say, okay, finances are important. You need money, right? But what do you need money for? So let's start with our basic things that we need to live: food, water, and shelter.
Yep.
Do I have enough to cover food, water, and shelter? Cool. Put that into a category.
Yep.
Then you add on from there. Well, now that I've got my basic survival needs met, what are some things that provide me comfort that I enjoy doing?
Yep.
Like, I like to go surfing, and surfboards aren't cheap. Neither are wetsuits. I like to go fishing. Fishing is not
definitely
cheap.
not a cheap activity either.
No. By the way, your boy that you had that's out in Bermuda, is it Will?
Worth. Yeah.
Worth.
Yeah.
Holy crap, dude! They won like $150,000.
Yeah, they killed it,
dude.
They killed it.
Shout out to him and to you for having him on your podcast. That was so cool to see.
Yeah.
But yeah, so your basic needs are met, and then what are those comfort items that you like to have because you find joy in them? Like, us having chickens is probably more expensive lifetime value than just going to frickin' Whole Foods and buying a dozen organic free-range eggs.
Yep.
When you put the exorbitant amount of money I spent building that chicken coop for my wife.
Same exact
You and
thing,
I share that. You and I share that.
Definitely.
Or the however much money I spent building the garden boxes to get like a couple dozen tomatoes.
Right, exactly.
But the money doesn't matter on what that costs, because those activities bring us joy.
Absolutely.
So that's how I look at financial success now. Are our needs met? Are we progressing towards retiring? Because I don't want to outlive my money. I see a lot of people that they get to that point and they're like, I just have to keep working.
Yeah.
So you have to prepare for the future, meet your needs, prepare for the future, and then whatever you have left over, that discretionary income, do what you want with it.
Right.
Just do what makes you happy.
I hear you.
And if you can do those three things, you don't need much more than that, in my opinion.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So when do you think you like finally figured that out? At what point in your life?
Like now?
Yeah.
Really now.
Yeah.
The 4 years of being in business so far, I'm going to be entering into my 5th year of being on my own. And I've kind of talked to a lot of people in business that are ahead of me now. Like, I stopped listening to people. I didn't stop listening to them. I still commiserate would be the right word for it.
Yeah.
With people that are at the same, timeline as me in terms of being in business for yourself.
Yep.
And then I look ahead to those ones that have been doing it for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, and trying to forecast out like how my life will look. Circumstances are totally different. We're completely different people. I understand that.
Yep.
But most of the people that are at year 10 or year 15 said at year 5, I really figured it out.
Yeah.
Like that's when it kind of started to make sense. And when you think about it, I'm going to misquote the book. I don't want to screw it up. But the gentleman who said it takes 10,000 hours to become pretty much a virtuoso at anything. So if you're dedicating
in 10,000 hours, if you look at it on a standard work year of about 2,000 hours a year, that's 5 years.
That's about 5 years,
about 5
right?
years.
So if the thing that you're practicing is golf and you're practicing golf for 10,000 hours,
right,
you're going to be a really good golfer at the end of that.
Yep.
Flip over to I practiced business for 5 years for 10,000 hours.
Right.
By that 10,001st hour, you're like, okay, I kind of figured it out because I screwed a lot of stuff up.
But you got to be like disciplined about it because like the golf example, if you practice golf for 10,000 hours over like 40 years, you're probably still going to suck.
You probably.
Right? Because you got to have that like consistency of every day, going and building those, the muscle memory and the mindset to do that. But I think it's the same with business. It's the same with a lot of things in life. Like you got to be consistent about how you're doing it.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, if you're serious about business, right, and you show up every single day, like you're putting in those reps every single day.
Yep.
And, there's the hours that people don't see when your business is closed, when you're catching up on emails or you're like, oh, crap, I've got 100 transactions that I have to code because I'm an awful bookkeeper, or I've got this kind of customer service issue that is important. It just wasn't urgent. But now I need to come back around to it. So really like, dude, when you're in those first 5 years of business ownership, you're putting in 10 to 12 hours a day, whether or not they're 10 to 12 office hours or focused hours, you're putting in repetitions. And over that 5-year, 10,000 hour, life cycle, you'll try things that don't work. And you'll go, well, crap, that didn't work. I always like, if you're going to fail fast and move on.
Yep.
Right? Go, that's not working. I'm going to stop this now. I still have a passion for what I'm doing, so I'm going to find a different way to make it work. That was all just practice on, like a bad habit in a golf swing, right? Like if you're coming too high over the top and you're chunking every ball that you hit, it's like, I got to stop doing that.
Yeah.
That can be like, oh, this marketing thing that I thought was going to make me $10 million ended up costing me $250,000 and netted me nothing. That's an over the top swing. I need to change that tactic.
Right.
But if you're doing it and you're putting in the effort and you're consistent and you're focused and you keep your priorities in that, I'm going to make this work, and give yourself grace, knowing that you're going to screw up.
Yep.
And you're going to screw up, and there's going to be times where your screw ups impact other people around you. When you walk that road and you know that that's a possibility, I think you try a little bit harder.
Yeah, for sure.
I think you just try a little bit harder.
Yeah. So, especially like, when there's another saying, it's like, if you say you're going to do something out loud to like other people, you're kind of like putting a bug in your head. It's like, oh, like I'm setting this expectation, and it like gives you like a little bit more of a drive to.
Cognitive dissonance is a hell of a thing, right? Like exactly. when you say you're going to do something and you don't do it, and you're somebody who has self-discipline and also has self-accountability, that sits with you until the thing gets done. Yeah. Right?
Totally.
And I think it's important to like just own your mistakes generally to people. Like if it's a customer or, Chris Voss wrote the Never Split the Difference.
Yeah, it's a good
Great book.
Yeah.
One of the best things that I learned from him was the chapter on leading with the negative dynamic.
Yes.
Right? So if
getting somebody to say no, is that the one?
So leading with the negative dynamic was more like, if like I screwed up, let's say we screwed up one of your podcast episodes. It was real bad.
You're going to kill me.
Own it up front. Yep. Chris, we screwed this up and I'm sorry. I take ownership and I take accountability for it.
Yep.
How would you like for us to fix it?
Yep.
And just go, I'm wrong. I own it. You want to kill me? You want to punch me? No? Okay, well then let's figure out a way to fix it together.
Yep.
And then it just diffuses that whole like negative vibe that can occur when there's an unsolved problem or conflict between two people.
Yep.
It's just immediately disarming and diffusing and saying, I did this wrong. What can we do right?
Yeah.
Like, how can we fix it?
Yeah.
So I don't know where I was going with that thought, but it was a good one. It's going to make a good social media clip.
Well, what spurred all this was I was asking you what your definition of success was, and asking you when you figured that out.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm just kind of figuring out that now.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, I've been in business kind of for myself for 5 years,
Yeah.
and then we got onto the topic of being a virtuoso in 10,000 hours, which is about that 5-year mark.
What's great about podcasting?
Yeah.
You just talk about a whole bunch of stuff without any real plan.
Yeah, exactly. Man, no, it's really cool. I think like your definition of success is that, is it's cool that you have one, and a lot of people don't know what their definition is, and it's hard to go somewhere if you don't know where you're going.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So in like bringing it back to business and stuff, when I meet with clients for the first time, typically they have a problem and they really want to talk about it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, okay, like let's talk about your problem. But then we take a step back. I'm like, okay, so what's the 5 years, 10 years look like? What's that picture look like?
Yeah.
Because that really, looking at what the long-term picture is, helps you plan backwards to figure out, okay, what do I need to do today, this week, this month, this quarter, this year to get me closer to achieving that end goal?
Do you find when you ask people that most of them, like their immediate default position is to go with like a financial goal?
I'd say it's really kind of 50-50. I think what surprises me is what I had expected to hear from most business owners was, I want to sell my business, right? Which equates to a financial goal.
Yeah.
But if you dig deeper, I think with that, obviously there's a financial goal, but if you really dig deeper, what it means is that they're looking for that freedom to go and do what they truly love.
That's all everybody's chasing, right?
It's chasing the dream, man. Trying to figure out how to keep the dream alive.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of business owners, when they start their business, it starts out as something that they really enjoy doing, for the majority of people. You get the people that are like, I'm just truly a commercial, in it for the money type deal. And that's great.
That's going to be the sandwich shop
that's
people.
Fantastic. Right?
I don't know how you can own 36 Jersey Mikes and find joy in making a delicious sandwich every day.
Right.
It's got to be more about like, I'm running a business that makes sandwiches.
Right, exactly.
I don't know how you get, like over the moon doing backflips about that.
No, exactly. But, most business owners, they get into business because they love what they're doing. They have a passion about it. And then, they grow, and then you have to hire people. And then with that comes additional responsibility. There's liabilities. You're like, okay, I'm hiring these people. Like, I'm now in charge of, providing for my employees. Like, I can't just, if I wake up tomorrow and I don't feel like doing this anymore, it'd be kind of messed up if I'm just like, all right, guys, we're closing the doors. Thanks for 5 years of your life and everything. And, peace, see you later.
Yeah.
But it really comes back to, where do I want to be in 10 years? And I think a lot of people, they build a business with starting with something that they love. And they get away from doing the stuff that they truly enjoy because it turns into a business and you got to do it. And ultimately it's like, how do I exit? And those are, and that's like the most fun conversations to have with people is, how do we strategize for that plan? And really, what it comes back to is having a good foundation and control over what's going on today, and really truly knowing what is that goal in 10 years, because we can look at your P&L and we could put KPIs together that says, yes, you're making money and your profit margin is 15%, and, which is above, average.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's about, being able to do what brings you enjoyment.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. What do you recommend for people that, like, because the business owner, and I've found myself guilty of this, so it's probably now turning into a therapy session for Rob more than anything else.
It's a mutual session.
Yes.
So
sharing and receiving of value.
there you go.
For the busy business person who might be too far in the weeds to really go pull themselves up and go, all right, this is why I'm doing this. And this is my goal by this date. How do you recommend people do that?
Man, it's so hard to do. It really is. And I wouldn't say there's a right solution for every situation, but somehow you have to you have to get yourself out of the business and where you can just refresh your mindset on like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Why are we, what's the goal? Like why are we doing this? Like, yeah, I know that I have to get this order out this week to meet this customer's deadline and I'm going to do everything, but this isn't necessarily where I started.
Mm-hmm.
I think a really practical thing is, and it's really scary and hard to do, is go take a vacation, turn your phone off, turn your email off, and just literally try not to think about work for a while. And it's extremely hard to do. It's going to take you many days to even just get out of that mindset.
Yeah.
But like day 6, 7, 8, you start to realize you're like, seriously, like, it's going to take a while.
Your last 2 days of vacation are the only good ones.
I know, exactly. And then, it's like, take a 10-day vacation. First 5 days, you're trying to get out of it. Day 6 and 7 and 8, you're like enjoying it.
Yeah.
And then day 9, you're like,
crap, I got to go home.
I got to go back to work. I got to start thinking about
loads
stuff.
of emails waiting for me. Yeah.
I think some of the best like thoughts and decisions and just general, effectiveness and productivity are after you have a chance to take a break.
Yeah.
Now, it could be so difficult to do because, for a lot of business owners, to take that break means, how is this business going to run while I'm gone?
Yeah.
And that's why, there's business coaches out there. There's psychologists. I mean, there's a bunch of different people that you can go and speak to. And, there's a different solution to do it, for each individual. But, working yourself out of the business should be, that's got to be part of the exit plan is how do I work out? And I think, certain people are like, you know what? Like, I want someone to come in and run the business because I just want to be the creative person. That's why I'm here.
Right.
This is why I started the business. Love doing this. And I don't want to look at P&Ls. I don't want to worry about my bookkeeping. I don't want to worry about, my insurance policy that's going to renew. I'd rather just hire somebody to take care of all that stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Isn't it funny? You start a business because at the end of the business, if you do all the things right, you'll have freedom. Exactly. That's what we're all chasing.
Yeah.
Or you start a business and then you hire somebody to give you freedom.
Right.
But you still have the business, and then there's always the risk of that person leaving.
Yep.
Whereas you could just not do any of those things and be a surf bum.
I know. I mean, there's and that's
go full-time hippie.
There's. I think that success should be measured based on your just general happiness.
Yeah.
If you're not a happy person, and this is my opinion. If you're not a happy person, like how can you be successful if you're not happy? Like life's too short, man. You only have so much time. And I think kind of like you were saying, it took you, several years to define what your version of success is. I think I'm getting a little bit closer in that.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's very similar. Is that I want to enjoy what I do every day. And I'm lucky to be able to find enjoyment somehow and just help, in helping people solve problems.
Mm-hmm.
And that's ultimately what it comes down to is when people ask what we do as bookkeepers and fractional CFOs, I typically tell them we help you see your business finances clearly and we help you solve problems.
Yeah. I'd add that you guys bring peace of mind too as well.
Well, thank you.
I think every good professional service person that you hire to do the things that take away from, like you just mentioned, I like being the creative person. I like being the big picture person.
Right.
I like going, here's our strategy. Here's the market. Here's how we can go to market. And if we follow these things, we'll scale and we'll grow. But then things like bookkeeping freak me out.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I know that it has to happen. But at the same time, too, I'm kind of naturally lazy and I'm going to procrastinate and I'm going to put that thing off. So when you bring in a good professional service provider to keep your books, to run your risk management, to have your money make more money, that gives you peace of mind. And that's unquantifiable in terms of how much money you pay somebody to do that.
I think that's a good measure of success, is having a team of trusted people that's helping you achieve the goal, right? Like, that's a pretty good measure, I'd say.
Yeah.
And there's an old adage that says the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
The next best time is today.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I guess to say, also to kind of answer the question, how, for a business owner, how do I step out? How do I do it well? I mean, this is the worst answer, but it's like, from the beginning, you got to have that mindset of how am I going to do this? And that's just surrounding yourself with people that are smarter than you in different areas and can help you, think differently, right? That's the power of a team.
Steve Jobs doesn't need me to carry his water for him, but he had a great quote, and it was, "We don't hire smart people to tell them what to do. We hire smart people so they can tell us what to do."
Exactly.
And that one's always just kind of stuck with me.
Me too, man.
Yeah.
I absolutely. It's so funny you brought up Steve Jobs, because I did a commencement speech for, I think, our MSA program when we graduated. And I was like, I don't know anything. So I basically just quoted a bunch of Steve Jobs stuff. And I just he's just got such an incredible outlook and philosophy on life. And, coming from someone who's super successful.
Yeah.
Well, again, there we go. Super successful.
Right?
I mean, he made a lot of money and
was he
changed the
happy?
world. But I don't know. I
Yeah.
mean, I think that was part of his dilemma.
Yeah.
Is he used to go on these different retreats and all these different things to really try to find, like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
And a lot of people would say he was a gnarly dude to deal with.
Yeah.
I mean, but hey, I mean, that's comes with the territory,
Sure
I
does.
guess.
Sure does.
But
Sure
well,
does.
cool, man. Well, just kind of wrapping up here.
Yep.
Thanks for coming on. Good conversations. And for people that might want to start a podcast or have, some type of sales and marketing or just general business coaching.
Yep.
How do we get in contact?
I haven't put a
with
price on my general business coaching yet, so reach out to me for podcasting for sure. But if you want to, I aim to give and I aim to serve. So if somebody wants to get in touch with me, LinkedIn's a great place to connect with me. It's just Rob Rens on LinkedIn. I'm a somewhat decent follow on Instagram. I think I've been working on it.
Decent
it's
follow.
Rob_Rens on Instagram, and you can always email me. It's rob@signalfire.media.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks again, Rob.
Thank you, Chris.
Good
Appreciate
catching
you, man.
up.
You too, bud.
Thank you all for joining, and have a good rest of the day, and go figure out a way to find what your definition of success is, and make that the priority: happiness and success. Thanks.